They told you to heal so you could return to normal. But what if normal was the very thing that broke you? This time you're not going back. You're rising forward. You're not here to be functional. You're here to be fierce. You're not healing to fit in. You're healing to take up space. From the moment we break, whether it's through trauma, heartbreak, failure, or loss, the world rushes in with a prescription. Get back to normal. The advice is well-meaning, but shallow. Friends, family, therapists, even self-help books often push the idea that healing means returning to who you were before the wound, to feel okay again, to function again, to blend back into the crowd. The goal becomes simple. Smile more, cry less, do what you used to do, and convince yourself that you're fine. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to admit. Normal is what broke you in the first place. What we call normal is often a state of quiet desperation. It's waking up every day with a knot in your stomach but pretending everything's okay. It's smiling at people who never saw you, tolerating relationships that drained you, showing up to jobs or environments where you felt like a ghost. Normal meant suppressing your voice to keep the peace. It meant silencing your pain because the world didn't want to hear it. It meant dimming your light so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable in your presence. You weren't thriving. You were performing. You weren't free. You were functional. And the cost of that illusion? Your authenticity, your aliveness, your truth. So when people say, I just want to feel normal again, what they're really saying is, I want to go back to being numb. But healing isn't about anesthetizing yourself from pain. It's about waking up from the lie that pain is abnormal. It's not. Pain is a messenger, a signal that something within you no longer fits the version of life you've been living, that something has to change, that something must evolve. And so the real tragedy isn't that you were broken. The real tragedy would be going through all that hurt, all that chaos, all that soul-deep agony, only to return to a life that was never worthy of you in the first place. You were never meant to return. That old life, that normal, was a temporary chapter, a cocoon, not a conclusion. You weren't meant to go back. You were meant to outgrow, to expand, to rise into a life that reflects who you are becoming, not who you used to be. Because once you see the truth of your pain, once you start listening to the message beneath your suffering, you realize something profound. Healing isn't about going back to how things were. It's about discovering how powerful you were meant to be all along. Pain is one of the greatest teachers life will ever offer you, and yet most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid it, numb it, or outrun it. We've been conditioned to see pain as the enemy, as something to suppress or medicate. But pain is not here to destroy you. Pain is a portal. It's not the end of your story. It's the doorway to a version of you that could never be born in comfort. It's the fire that burns away the false so the real you can emerge. Think about it. Every breakthrough you've ever had in life was preceded by discomfort. Every evolution you've experienced came with a cost, a moment where you were forced to confront what you didn't want to face. Pain doesn't show up because you're weak. It shows up because you're being invited to level up. You're being invited to stop clinging to what no longer serves you. Pain rips away the surface so you can finally meet what's been buried underneath. Your unmet needs, your suppressed voice, your forgotten dreams. It demands your attention not to punish you, but to wake you up. And yet, most people never walk through that portal. They stand at the threshold, terrified. They fear what they'll find if they go too deep. But here's the truth. Whatever pain you're running from is already running your life. It's shaping your decisions, your relationships, your self-worth, whether you face it or not. So the real power begins when you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this trying to awaken in me? Because within every wound is a message. Within every heartbreak is a mirror. Within every breakdown is a blueprint for breakthrough, if you have the courage to look. Pain carves space inside you. It makes room for wisdom, depth, empathy, and purpose. You become more dimensional because of it. And yes, it hurts. Transformation always does. But it's the kind of hurt that frees you. Like a snake shedding old skin. Like a phoenix burning to be reborn. Your suffering is not meaningless unless you let it be. The agony you're feeling is not random. It's alchemical. It's sculpting you into someone more powerful, more resilient, more awake. But only if you walk through it. Only if you stop seeing your pain as something to get over and start seeing it as something to walk through. This is the portal, and the only way out is through. Healing is not about restoration. It's about rebirth. Most people see healing as a process of returning to who they were before the wound, as if the highest goal is to reclaim some former version of themselves. But that's a misunderstanding of what true healing really is, because when you truly heal, when you actually face your darkness, sit with your pain, and peel back the layers of your soul, you don't go back. You become something entirely new. Healing, at its deepest level, is not a rewind. It's not putting broken pieces back together with glue. It's a transformation so radical that the person you become wouldn't even recognize the person you used to be. The old you, the version that tolerated pain silently, that lived to please others, that doubted their worth, doesn't survive real healing. That version dies, and it should. Because healing isn't about patching holes in your personality. It's about discovering the parts of you that were never allowed to live in the first place. The boldness, the boundaries, the truth, the vision, the fire. Healing is evolution, not maintenance. Imagine a seed trying to become a tree, but clinging to the safety of being a seed. That's what we do when we try to heal just enough to function again. We fear change so much that we'd rather shrink back into our former smallness than step into our next expansion. But evolution doesn't care about your comfort zone. It cares about your potential. And true healing always demands that you evolve. Not just emotionally, but spiritually, mentally, and even energetically. You begin to think differently. You feel things more deeply. You align your life with truth instead of tradition. And in doing so, you become someone you've never been before. You begin to say no where you used to stay silent. You speak with clarity instead of apology. You take up space. You walk differently. You choose differently. You don't just react to life anymore, you design it. You move with intention, with inner authority, with self-respect. That's not a return to normal. That's the emergence of the real you, the version of you that was buried under conditioning, survival mode, and fear. So if you're healing right now, don't aim to be who you were. Aim to become who you were meant to be all along, before the world taught you to be afraid of your own power. Because healing isn't a finish line. It's the beginning of your evolution. To be unstoppable is not to be fearless. It's to be unshakable despite your fear. It's not the absence of pain, doubt, or failure. It's the conscious decision to no longer be ruled by them. Most people think of unstoppable as a personality trait, something you're either born with or not. But that's not true. Unstoppable is a mindset, a cultivated state of being that is forged in the fires of adversity, refined by reflection, and solidified by action. It's not about how many times life hits you. It's about the decision you make every single time to rise with purpose, not just pain. The unstoppable mindset doesn't come from books or quotes or quick motivation. It's born in the silent battles, the mornings where you get up despite the ache, the nights where no one claps for your effort, but you show up anyway. It comes from facing what once crippled you and choosing to walk through it anyway, again and again. Unstoppable people aren't superhuman. They're radically human, but with one key difference. They've decided that their story will not end in survival. It will end in impact, in transformation, in legacy. They've learned to alchemize suffering into strength, to transmute rejection into redirection. They've stopped playing victim to their circumstances and started writing their story with blood, sweat, and conviction. When you step into this mindset, your entire orientation toward life changes. Setbacks become fuel. Criticism becomes feedback. Fear becomes compass. You begin to see pain not as something that derails you, but as a signal that you're stretching into your edge. You no longer chase comfort. You chase clarity. You no longer seek validation. You seek alignment. The opinions of others, they lose power. The old identity that once dictated your choices, it dissolves. Because when you become unstoppable, you are no longer negotiating with your potential. You're committed to it. You no longer need permission to rise. You simply decide to. And this mindset isn't loud or arrogant, and it's grounded. It's the quiet power that says, I know who I am, I know what I've survived, and I know where I'm going. It's not about domination, it's about liberation. You're not trying to beat the world, you're trying to free yourself from the version of you that once believed you couldn't. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I rise in a way I never have before? That's the shift. That's the power. That's what happens when you stop healing just to feel better and start healing to become unstoppable. There comes a moment in every transformation where you must make a brutal, liberating choice to stop trying to fix the old plan and instead burn the blueprint entirely. Most people, even after they start healing, are still trying to force their growth to fit into the outdated version of their life. They want to evolve, but only if it doesn't make others uncomfortable. They want to rise, but not if it means releasing people, environments, or identities that once made them feel safe. But evolution doesn't negotiate with the past. And healing is not about adjusting the old framework. It's about realizing that the person you're becoming was never meant to survive inside that structure. Think of it like this. If you build a house based on faulty plans, and that house collapses, do you patch it up with duct tape and hope it stands next time? You throw away the blueprint. You create something new, something stronger, something true. The same is true for your life. The life you're being called to build, the life that aligns with your truth, your fire, your purpose, cannot be constructed using the plans that were handed to you by wounded people, broken systems, or a society that taught you to play small. That version of you, the one shaped by survival, scarcity, and silence, isn't meant to be upgraded. It's meant to be outgrown. And yes, this part of the healing journey is terrifying because it requires death. The death of who you thought you were supposed to be. The death of the identity that kept you safe but small. It asks you to let go of your old definitions of success, worth, love, and even reality. It's disorienting. It's lonely. It will make you question everything, but it's also sacred. Because in the ashes of that burned blueprint, you find your truth. You realize you don't have to rebuild a life that fits other people's expectations. You don't have to return to anything. You're not obligated to play a role you've outgrown. You have permission, divine, undeniable permission, to design a life that mirrors your soul, not your scars. So if you're in that space right now, that in-between place where the old version of you no longer fits and the new version hasn't fully emerged, don't panic, don't rush. Burn the blueprint. Let the old identity collapse. Let the former dream die if it needs to, because what's coming next isn't a revised version of your past. It's a revolution of your future, and it can only be born when you stop asking, how can I get back to who I was? And start declaring, who I was is not big enough for who I'm becoming. Every healing journey, no matter how personal or painful, eventually arrives at a crossroads, a moment of reckoning. And in that moment, you are faced with a question that defines the rest of your life. Will you go back to what is familiar, or will you rise into who you were meant to be? This is the hero's choice. Not the choice to be fearless, but the choice to keep going even when fear is screaming. Not the choice to be perfect, but the choice to be true, no matter the cost. Every story of greatness, every person who has ever broken generational curses or rewritten their destiny stood at this same intersection. And they didn't wait for certainty. They chose courage. Because healing is not passive. It is not gentle. It is not always pretty. Real healing will ask you to confront your shadows, dismantle your patterns, and leave behind the very people or places that once felt like home. It will feel like a betrayal at first, like you're walking away from everything you knew. But what you're really doing is refusing to abandon yourself any longer. You're choosing to stop living a life designed by fear, trauma, or inherited limitation. You're choosing to step into the unknown, not because it's easy, but because staying stuck would be soul death. And that moment, that raw, terrifying leap into your next level, that's what makes you unstoppable. This is where your story becomes legend. Not when everything is fixed or perfect or neatly resolved, but when you realize you are the only one who can author your becoming. You are not just healing to feel better. You are healing to become dangerous to everything that once silenced you. You are healing to wake up the part of you that knows you were never meant to live a normal life. You were meant to lead, to liberate, to elevate. And that kind of becoming, it's not something you fall into by chance. It's something you choose again and again, every day, until your transformation becomes your truth. So make the choice not to return, not to conform, not to cope, but to rise, to lead, to become the living proof that pain is not the end, it's the beginning of power. And you are not healing to fit in. You are healing to break free. You are not healing to be normal. You are healing to become unstoppable. We're taught to chase wholeness like it's a destination, a final state of healing where nothing hurts, nothing's missing, and nothing can shake us. But the truth is, wholeness isn't about perfection. It's about integration. It's not about erasing your wounds, your past, or your scars. It's about reclaiming them, owning every broken piece, every fractured chapter, every contradiction, and choosing to stand in your story with power instead of shame. Real wholeness means you no longer see your pain as a defect, but as part of your design. You stop waiting to feel ready or be fixed before you show up in your fullness. You realize your past doesn't make you unworthy. It makes you real. And being real, that's what makes you magnetic. Because people don't connect with perfection, they connect with truth. And when you own your wholeness, not as an illusion of flawlessness, but as a radical embrace of your entire self, you become unstoppable. Not because you're finished, but because you're authentic. There is a kind of grief that comes not from loss, but from outgrowing your life. A quiet ache that whispers, you were meant for more than this. The job that drains you, the relationships that shrink you, the environment that stifles your spirit. These are the cages we often call security. And yet deep down we know, comfort is not the same as peace. Familiarity is not the same as fulfillment. Sometimes healing means realizing that you are living in a version of your life that was built by a smaller, scared version of you. And now, that version can't hold who you are becoming. To be unstoppable, you must be willing to let go of the very things that once kept you safe. You must be willing to disappoint others to stop betraying yourself. You must outgrow the cage, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Because some doors only open after you leave the room. Some dreams only appear after you release the one that no longer fits. You don't owe the past your future. You owe yourself the courage to evolve. Most people spend their lives mistaking their identity for their trauma. They say things like, this is just how I am. But what they really mean is, this is who I became to survive. But survival is not identity. It's adaptation. And what you had to become in order to make it through the pain is not who you're meant to stay. The truth is, identity is not found. It is chosen. It is built, sculpted, reinvented, over and over again, as many times as necessary. You do not have to stay the version of yourself who was created by pain. You can become the version who was forged by purpose. That's what unstoppable people do. They don't just heal from their past. They redefine who they are in light of it. They create new stories, new patterns, new standards. They stop asking, who am I supposed to be? And start asking, who do I choose to become now? That's not delusion, that's evolution. That's the power of becoming. And it begins the moment you stop identifying with your wounds and start identifying with your will. Healing often begins in the world of self-help, books, quotes, journaling, practices, but at some point, it must evolve. It must become more than a ritual. It must become self-respect. Because real healing isn't about doing more. It's about finally believing that you are worthy of more. That you no longer have to hustle for healing. That you don't need to constantly fix yourself to prove your value. That you get to walk away from chaos not because you're superior, but because your peace is no longer negotiable. Self-respect is the point where healing becomes action, where boundaries are no longer suggestions, where you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, where you no longer chase closure, you create it, where you stop choosing potential in others and start choosing power in yourself. This is the shift, the moment when healing stops being something you do and starts being someone you are. It's hard to see it at the time. When you're in the middle of the storm, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it just feels like ruin. But in hindsight, when you've done the work, when you've risen from the ashes, you see it clearly. The fire was the gift. It didn't come to destroy you. It came to burn away everything that wasn't real, everything that wasn't you. The fire didn't make you broken. It revealed how unbreakable you truly are. Some of the most unstoppable people you'll ever meet are the ones who've suffered the most. Because pain didn't close them, it carved them. It made them deep, real, unshakable. And when they say, "Nothing can stop me," it's not ego, it's lived truth. It's the quiet knowing that once you've been through the worst, once you've stood in the fire and refused to collapse, the world no longer gets to define your limits. You do. The fire wasn't your punishment, it was your initiation. One of the most dangerous traps in healing is the belief that if you just become healthy enough, healed enough, or wise enough, the people who hurt you will finally treat you right, that the world will finally recognize your worth. But let's be honest, healing is not a performance for validation. It's not a means to finally be accepted by people who refuse to see you even when you were bleeding in front of them. If your healing is rooted in being palatable to others, it's not liberation, it's manipulation. You're still stuck in the same cycle, just dressed in spiritual language. True healing demands that you stop contorting yourself to be digestible. You stop twisting your truth into something cute and calm just to avoid rejection. You stop wearing peace as a mask instead of living it as a frequency. Because healing to be accepted is still a form of survival. You're still asking others for permission to be whole. But unstoppable healing, that's different. That's when you say, "I don't need to be understood to be free. I don't need to be liked to be powerful. My existence is not up for approval. I'm not healing to be chosen. I'm healing because I finally chose myself." In a world that profits off your doubt, markets your insecurity, and thrives on your obedience to a system that never loved you, healing is rebellion, radical, loud, necessary. Every time you choose to question the beliefs handed to you, the ones that told you to shrink, to settle, to stay silent, you are reclaiming territory. Every time you draw a boundary, say no, walk away from toxicity, or demand more, not just from the world, but from yourself, you're breaking chains that have existed for generations. Healing is not soft. It is not passive. It is not sweet music and candles and baths, though those can be sacred parts. No, healing is a war cry. It is your soul saying, "I refuse to die in the version of me that was built by pain." It is ancestral, political, energetic. To heal in a society that wants you numbed, distracted, addicted, and exhausted is to fight back. And when you decide that you are no longer available for mediocrity, no longer compliant with your own suppression, you become dangerous. Not to the world, but to the systems that were built to keep you small. Your wholeness is a threat. Your joy is protest. And your freedom, that is revolution. We talk a lot about the pain of healing, but not enough about the grief, because in every rebirth, something must die. And often it's not just toxic patterns or old environments. It's you. The version of you that clung to people who couldn't love you back. The version that stayed silent to keep the peace. The version that made themselves small to be tolerable. When you finally choose to rise, you must mourn the identity that kept you safe in the fire, but was never meant to walk with you in the light. This grief is sacred. It's not weakness, it's acknowledgement. You're not just losing a habit, you're letting go of a whole internal architecture. You're honoring the inner child, the protector, the survivor, the ones who got you through. But they were built for war. And now, you're building a life in peace. Let them rest. Let them go. Say thank you. Say goodbye. This is the part no one talks about, the heartbreak of healing. But in that heartbreak, you'll also find clarity. You'll realize, I don't have to keep living like I'm still in danger. I don't have to wear armor in rooms where I now walk in truth. The old me had purpose, but the new me has power. We often mistake the return of discomfort as failure. We think, I thought I was past this, or I should be better by now. But what if the pain you feel is not regression, but resistance to the new self trying to emerge? What if that ache in your chest, that fear in your gut, is not a sign you're falling back, but a sign you're on the edge of a massive shift? You're not failing, you're transforming. And all transformation requires discomfort, because you are literally unlearning everything that no longer serves who you are becoming. Pain is the body's alarm, the soul's signal. It means you're moving. It means you're touching parts of yourself that were buried, abandoned, or neglected. That's not weakness. That's the work. You can't become unstoppable without facing resistance. That's why gyms have weights. That's why swords are forged with heat. Growth is supposed to stretch you. So when the pain returns, don't panic. Pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what is this showing me about the next level I'm stepping into? Because if the pain has purpose, it's not punishment. It's preparation. Your discomfort is not the end of your healing. It's the proof that healing is working. There are people watching you, silently, maybe unconsciously, waiting to see if you'll make it, if you'll really become the version of yourself they only dream of. You might not realize it, but your healing is not just about you. It's a map for someone else's liberation. Every time you rise, every time you set a boundary, choose love over fear, truth over silence, alignment over approval, you are showing someone what's possible. You are becoming the proof, the example, the evidence that it can be done, that you can come from chaos and still choose clarity, that you can come from dysfunction and still build peace, that you can come from pain and still become powerful. We don't need more people talking about healing. We need more people embodying it, living it, walking into rooms with energy so solid, so authentic, so sovereign, that others remember who they are just by being near you. That's what it means to be unstoppable. You don't just heal to survive. You heal to lead. And leadership isn't about followers. It's about example. Be the one who breaks the cycle, who lives in their truth, who chooses freedom again and again until the world around you is forced to rise too. That is how we heal. Not to be normal, but to become a force of transformation for everything we touch. So now you know you were never healing to go back. You were healing to go beyond. Beyond the lies you were told about what's normal. Beyond the versions of you that were built just to survive. Beyond the illusion that peace means silence or that love means shrinking. Because the truth is, you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to wake people up, to walk into your future with so much clarity, presence, and power that the old world can't even recognize you. You were never meant to blend. You were meant to blaze. And this journey, this fierce, raw, unrelenting journey back to yourself, this is only the beginning. If you're still here, still watching, still feeling this in your bones, it means something inside you is rising. It means the fire hasn't died. It means the real you, the unstoppable you, is waking up. So breathe deep, stand tall, and let the world feel you're becoming. Because in the next video, we're going even deeper, not just into healing, but into awakening, into what comes next when you stop trying to fix yourself and start becoming the force you were always meant to be. Subscribe if you haven't. Turn on notifications, because the next one, it's not just a video, it's your next evolution. I'll see you there.